Hey, Al fans. In the drizzle of New Jersey, and it's supposed to be a deluge later, which bums me out. The Al report goes on. It was a short week. Good to always have orange on. We won our only game against Anaheim. Have my goal, yes, yes, yes chance that I wore at the last game in the history of the barn because they suggested we all wear blue. So I'll probably be wearing this underneath my Al shirt today. I'm going with my son Steven and my nephew Christopher from Hicksville, Long Island. I want to take a more cerebral approach this week because we didn't have any games, and I want to discuss two things, what I call one of my favorite topics from last year called silver linings. And then I want to talk the complexity of the playoff picture, how you get points, and the important how you do get the points. So let's start with silver linings. Silver linings to me are, well, what's going well despite the fact that we haven't played our best hockey? One stat that really stood out to me that was incredible. Right now, the Isles are number 3 in goals, percentage of goals. We're at 2.29, which is third in the NHL. And last year, we were 22nd, 23rd, which portends well if, and I say the word if, we make the playoffs. And that's not a given. We'll get into that. Okay, last year we were 23rd, but we had a high-flying O, and we used to win 5-4, 6-5 pond hockey games, which don't lend itself to the playoffs. That's silver lining one. That's good, along with our 4th penalty kill. Those are silver linings. But here are the key silver linings. Tavares, Boychuk, Leddy, and Lee. My prediction, I'm going out on the limb. If they play to the back of their baseball cards, and that term for you who don't follow baseball is if a player starts off slow, they normally say, well, at the end of the year, his numbers will meet the back of his card. Well, Lee's only got a year and a third in, but the other guys have 3 to 5 or more years in. If they play to the back of their baseball card, which they haven't, okay, the Isles will advance for the first time in 23 years, regardless of the opponent. That's my prediction today. If they play like they've played the first 35 games for the 23rd year in a row, the Isles will not have won a playoff round. Cappy will be gone, and we could debate Snow. I know Daryl, if he's watching this, wants to come in with an excavation crane and unload everybody. I'm 50-50 on Snow, and I'll tell you why I'm 50-50. I'm okay with Snow getting canned, by the way. But the reason, let me give you the other 50, okay? It's because on his watch, we got Pulock, Pellich, and Mayfield on D. We have Barzell, Billival, Dalcol, and Ho-Sang that maybe a new coach will do a good job with. But let's not talk negatives. That's just my prediction. We'll have funny debates, okay? I could just see shovels coming out and cranes. Let's hope we don't get to that. So again, to finalize silver linings, if Tavares, Boychuk, Leddy, and Lee play to the back of their baseball cards, the Isles will advance. If they don't, for the 23rd year in a row, the Isles will be sitting home. Cappy will be gone, and the debates on Snow will happen. Let's talk playoffs. Right now, today, as we sit, we're on a collision course with the Rangers. We're sitting third, a point behind with a game in hand. No one's catching the Caps. This is just their year. I laugh when people say we're setting sights on the Caps. Yeah, we should. But they got 2-3 games in hands, and they're up like 10 on us. And they got a superstar goaltender, which we don't have. We have 2 solid goaltenders. But that's not important. Let's not get into that. Right now, we're on a collision course with the Rangers. Okay. Let's explain the playoffs. It gets hairy. I had my son, William, actually explain it to me last year, and I had to do some homework. Now I got it 90% down pat. I'd be a fool if I said I had 100. There are 2 divisions within our conference. There's 16 teams where we have the Metro and the Atlantic in the Eastern Conference. We play in the Met. I made the prediction last year that the Atlantic, who we're 1-7-1 against, that's the one conference that's kicked our ass, will get 5 of the 8 playoff positions. And I'm sticking with that prediction, okay? Now, the way it's done, it used to be traditionally 1 plays 8. And every year, William and I would laugh. The Owls would go into New Year's Eve, they'd play Buffalo like we do this year, and we'd be sitting in 13, battling to get 8th. Even in the strike year of 13, we want playoffs. We want playoffs. We finished 8th, put up a bitter struggle to play Pitt and lost. In 07, we were sitting 9th on the last night and led by Wayne Doobie-Doo Dublowitz, who was in for DiPietro. William and I gave up Easter to his grandma's anger. We went to Newark to see the Isles upend for the first time in history. They made the 8th seed in a shootout, first time in history, okay, in 07. So, in the nutshell, here's how it works. I know this may be more boring than the fiery Patelis last week, but what am I going to be fired about? There was one game. The first 3 teams in each division are in. That's why I always look, no matter what, shine your shoes, open the invitation, put on a tuxedo, you're invited to the dance. Automatically in. But where it differs is, instead of doing 1 through 8, they then take the teams with the 2 best records that are left. So there's 16 teams and 6 are at-large bids, I'll call them. That's an NCAA term. They're in. They're at the dance. They then take of the 10 teams that are left standing, the 2 best records, and they make the wild card. It is a misnomer to think that one comes from the Metro and one comes from the Atlantic. Wrong. They take the teams with the 2 best records. Now, tiebreakers come in. Want to talk about getting hairy? Let's talk about the 5 decisions of a hockey game. 4 to me are acceptable. 1 totally unacceptable. The first and most acceptable, win in regulation. The second and almost acceptable, and I'll explain to you why I say the almost, is win in overtime. The third is acceptable, but with some caveats, win in a shootout. The fourth, not highly desirable, but I did a whole video on this. If you're going to lose in overtime. And the fifth, totally unacceptable, lose in regulation. And we know that we're going to lose in regulation. But those are the 5 ways to acquire points. But here's where it gets tricky. The NHL changed the rules last year from 1 to 8 to what I said, top 3 and then the wild card. But the tiebreakers get very hairy. They penalize you for winning in the shootout. Even though you could win 80 shootouts and win the Stanley Cup with 160 points, the points are important. I'll take 40 shootout wins, but that's not going to happen. So then you won't see it in the paper. If you go onto NHL.com, there's a category called row, and I could just see the cartoons now with a rowboat or an oar. Regulation and overtime victories. Okay, wins. I'm sorry. That would be Rav. Dumb guy. It's not Rav. It's row. Regulation and overtime wins. Now, what they do here, let me paint a scenario. The end of the season, the Caps have 107 points. The Rangers have 101. The Isles have 101. Well, who's second? They go to the row category, and we're hurting right now in row because we won. What happened is the Rangers have 1 more loss, and because we lost in overtime more than them, we picked up a point. And the Rangers won 2 more games in regulation than us, so we both got 4 points, but they got it in the row. So let's explain how that panned out last year. Talk about complexity. I'm at my beloved barn, the last game ever played against Columbus. We're watching at the Marriott TVs. The The Caps just laid an egg in the last game of the year. They lost to the Rangers. They had all control of winning the division. All the Isles had to do was get 2 points. We go into the shootout. At that point, we had acquired a point, and we were tied with the Caps, tied. But we lost the shootout. That's why it's not entirely bad to get 2 in the shootout, but I'll explain to you the complexities. So now I go to my son, well, what the frick happens now? We're both tied. We want home ice because no one's beaten us in the barn last year. I don't necessarily feel that we have that much of a home ice in Brooklyn, but I don't want to get into arena debate. So having said that, they then went to row. We were both tied to Caps, 101 points. We had the same row. They then went to the third tiebreaker, head to head. Now, this is the only way regulation is better than overtime because they both are very heavily counted into the row. The Caps beat us twice in regulation, and we beat them twice in overtime. Ergo, Caps home ice. Ergo, Caps beat us Game 7. They don't beat us at the barn Game 7. I can tell you that for a fact, but it didn't happen. So that's the complexity, and how you get your points are important. Win in regulation, win in overtime, win in a shootout. If you're going to lose, lose in overtime, and do not freaking lose in regulation. Ultimately, it'll all pan out, but right now we're hurting in row. We are hurting in row because we won. Remember those 3 games we won in the shootouts? And we were good enough to lose in overtime. So we're up there with the points, but we're hurting on the tiebreakers. Okay, good thing the Devils lost yesterday because on our flank, the Devils were on our flank, and Pitt now starting to play well. So that's why it's not a given we're in the playoffs. So I'll be there today, probably go to 225 before the game and in between the periods. Let me also end on this, on a personal level. This has been a difficult year for me because they moved. And I've done my best to embrace the move. This is my 5th game. I'm wearing a black jersey today. But speaking on behalf of the Long Island fan base, as a 40-year resident of Nassau and Suffolk, it's been a very difficult transition. And I think that as traditions change and the fan base expands, we'll get used to it. But I read this silly post yesterday about changing the name to Brooklyn Islanders, or not even Islanders, just Brooklyn, whatever. I'll be honest with you, if they ever do that, 43 years of fandom will be gone. I will root for either the Devils, or when I move, I'm planning on moving someday to Florida or South Carolina. If they change my New York Islanders, who play in Brooklyn, to the Brooklyn whatever, I don't know that team. I don't know that team. And I will root for another team. But let's hope that doesn't happen in my lifetime anyway. And with that in mind, see some of you at the game. And let's go Isles. We have a busy schedule. Toronto, Buffalo. And then we have a game Saturday night that I'll worry about later. We have to get 5 out of those 6 points. Till then, let's go Isles. See some of you at the game.